President Biden will speak tomorrow. He just issued a statement on Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine. I'm going to read it in part. It says, quote, "The prayers of the entire world are with the people of Ukraine tonight as they suffer an unprovoked and unjustified attack by Russian military forces. President Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering. Russia alone is responsible for the death and destruction this attack will bring, and the United States and its allies and partners will respond in a united and decisive way. The world will hold Russia accountable." Of course, this UN Security Council meeting still ongoing at this point in time. I want to bring in one of our national security experts, friend of the program, Hal Kempfer, to respond to all of this latest news that seemingly is just breaking each and every minute here. Hal, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me on. There's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about. It's a very fluid situation. Right now, I want to put up a tweet from Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin, and she says, quote, "A U.S. official tells me right now we're seeing the pre-assault fires. Expect this to go on for a few hours. Land attack to follow with all of the full forces Putin has arrayed, explosions heard in Kyiv, Odessa, Mariupol. It has begun." We're also getting reports from Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst, who is in Kyiv. He said explosions in Kyiv. Of course, right now it's about 5:30 in the morning there. We have a live now look in Maidan Square. Hal, your reactions, we've been talking about this now for seemingly almost a month. It is here.
It is here, and what we're seeing are, whether you call them pre-assault fires, and that's perfectly acceptable military language, or preparatory fires prior to going in, we're seeing attacked fires all over. Now, the interesting thing is Odessa, that kind of indicates to me possible naval fires. Could be missile fires, could potentially involve naval gunfire, but that's what that kind of indicates, and that's interesting. That is showing that they're going in deep. They're hitting targets all over the country. Obviously, Kyiv, which is the capital city. Those are, and keep in mind, we only have so much information. Those are probably missile fires. They may be followed up with airstrikes.
Good evening, everyone. Stephen Benoon with Israeli News Live, and we are getting reports already in that the Russian-Ukrainian conflict has begun, and I have not been able to confirm this independently as far as from Washington as of yet. I do know that the embassy in Washington has been evacuated, and from what I understand, and of course the guy that's doing the video is a soldier. You can see him holding an AK-47. You see the tip of the barrel popping out a little bit, but it's also, from what we're seeing early reports of, is that Russia has already destroyed the naval base or the Navy, the Ukrainian Navy already, from what we're hearing as well. So we'll have to wait to see. It says the Russian Navy is conducting large-scale amphibious operations on the Azov coast from Odessa to Mariupol. The Ukrainian fleet was almost destroyed as a result of the preventative strikes, according to U.S. media. That's what's been reported thus far there. We don't know everything as of yet. That's just, I was trying to look this up as far as the Navy on Ukraine. We have heard that there's been a lot of explosions in Kiev as well. So again, everything is still kind of premature at this point. We don't know for sure what all is going on as of yet, and but we will try to find out as much as we possibly can. Of course, let's see here. Let's listen to what the president is saying.
Full blocking sanctions on two large Russian financial institutions, VEB and their military bank. We're implementing comprehensive sanctions on Russia's sovereign debt. That means we've cut off Russia's government from Western financing. It can no longer raise money from the West and cannot trade in its new debt on our markets or European markets either. Starting tomorrow and continuing in the days ahead, we'll also impose sanctions on Russia's elites and their family members. They share in the corrupt gains of the Kremlin policies and should share in the pain as well. Because of Russia's actions, we've worked with Germany to ensure Nord Stream 2 will not, as I promised, will not move forward.
There it is. There it is right there. The smoking gun. Stop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. The corrupt Biden family, as we've been mentioning already, Hunter Biden and his father Joe Biden, is the most corrupt presidency we've seen thus far. And this is exactly what we knew was coming. So they're going to put pressure on Germany. And you have to remember, Germany really is still under the War Powers Act there. So Germany is going to have to comply, or as I've been told, Germany may leave NATO altogether, because Germany will not side with NATO when it comes to the issue with Russia. So it's really going to have to see how this is going to pan out in the end here. But just going to have to see exactly how far Russia will go with this. So Russia has really caught everybody by surprise over this Ukraine deal. And it has everything to do, not so much with Ukraine. It's all about this Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And the president couldn't have said it any better when he made that final little statement there. This is Kiev and Russia there, exploding bombs and everything. Gee, Manetti. Wow. So, very, very serious way. So, not sure what they blew up there.
We're dangerous. Oh my God!
Well, they're all speaking English. Russia is definitely not playing around, friends. Not playing around on this issue at all.
Thank you for joining us tonight via telephone. You're watching this unfold. Your reaction to Putin's threat if any Western nation or any nation intervenes with this Russian military action.
Well, this is something that should have never happened. This would not have happened during my administration. In fact, some people were saying, why didn't this take place over the last 4 years during our administration? And it didn't, for a very good reason, and I'll explain that to you someday. But it wouldn't have taken place, and it wouldn't have taken place right now. And it's a very sad thing for the world, for the country, and it's certainly very sad for a lot of people that are going to be needlessly killed.
Remember,
President
President Trump met with some of the generals just recently.
How would you have avoided this conflict?
He had a better relationship with Putin than what Biden does. Let's face the facts.
Well, look, I do know him, and I know him very well. We've had many, many times together. I got along with him fantastically, despite the fact that I shut down Nord Stream 2. Nobody would have heard of Nord Stream 2 if it weren't for me. I'm the one that shut it down. And I'm the one that told Angela, you're doing a terrible thing by doing this. And they were going to get 75%, not 30%, 75% of their energy from Nord Stream 2. It was ridiculous. If you remember, I told you this privately once. I sent them a white flag, a flag of surrender. I gave it to, she said, what does this mean? I said, that means you'll surrender as far as Russia's concerned. They've had a lot of conflicts over the centuries. So I think that it's a terrible thing. The way it started, I really don't believe he wanted to do this initially. I think he wanted to do something and negotiate, and it just got worse and worse. And then he saw the weakness. And you know, it really started, I think, with the weakness in Afghanistan, the way they pulled out of Afghanistan. I really believe
right
that's
there.
where he started thinking, you know, he can do this. Because when he saw how pathetic...
President Trump, I want to just add...
You know, that's kind of interesting when he saw the patheticness of Biden when it comes to Afghanistan. And he's right. He's right. Listen, I go through these meetings. I know exactly what the deal is going on there. And this is, I've heard that over and over and over, that Biden is a very weak president. And that he allowed Afghanistan just to be pushed over and allowed our people to just be massacred over there. And then the whole issue with China and Taiwan, you can probably count Taiwan as probably fixing to go very, very soon. Biden is a weak president. Oh, he's pretty good as a, you get that thug mentality going in there with the Biden family there, and getting all that money off that Nord Stream pipeline that doesn't pump. Whatever doesn't pump, they get a cut. Russia has to pay for it. Well, Russia's had enough. They've had enough, and Putin is now making that known very, very well. So, and there's one point they said that he would take it all the way to Kiev. So let's see what happens. I guess they're letting the people know they've had enough is enough. Let's listen a little bit more to former President Trump.
Ask you this. We understand that President Biden is monitoring the situation at the White House now and is going to talk to the G7 tomorrow. Tomorrow? And he's going to talk to the nation at some point tomorrow as well. Your reaction to that approach?
I don't think he's monitoring. I think he's probably sleeping right now. This is a terrible thing. This is something that should have never happened. I really believe that it was Afghanistan when he looked at that horrible, weak pullout, one of the worst, when the military gets pulled out first, when people, our soldiers are dying and horribly wounded. And, when we leave $75, $85 billion worth of equipment. They're one of the biggest sellers of military equipment in the world right now. They're selling the equipment that we left at $85 billion. And we left hostages behind, a lot of hostages, more than anybody knew. I think when they saw that, Laura, I think that they said, maybe we can do this.
President Trump, the burgeoning friendship between President Xi and President Putin is of deep concern now, finally, I should say, to the State Department, which described this as a potentially destructive force in the world. Gone is the hope for some new world order where everyone's going to get along if you have our two major adversaries now working in concert, seemingly against the West. Did you think that was an important dynamic to disrupt when you were president, given...
If you'll notice on the screen, Putin threat, you will have consequences that you've never had before in your history. That's if the West intervenes. I've already told you, China said that they'll do an invasion. They got their back. We would see some very devastating war come to this nation. And that still is it's on the books, ready to go.
What a obviously powerful alliance that could end up being.
Well, I had a good relationship with both, but it was hurt by the Russia hoax, which was a total hoax. You see what happened with Durham and those reports and other reports, including Mueller. It was just a made-up hoax, and it really hurt our country. But despite the hoax, I had a good relationship, and I had a very good relationship with President Xi of China, other than he wasn't happy about the fact that I was tariffing and taxing the hell out of him, which somebody had to do finally after so many years. But I had a very good relationship. As a young man growing up, I always heard that the worst thing that can happen is if you drive those two countries together. And it really started with Obama
there you go.
and energy. He drove them together because one needed the energy and the other one needed the money. He drove them together, and Biden put them. I kept them apart. And Biden now it looks like it's a great love fest, and that's a very bad thing. For the fact, and I think you could probably add Iran into it too, because they're including Iran also, Laura. It's a very bad thing that happened.
Yes, don't be surprised now if Iran doesn't go ahead and strike Israel, because initially this whole war issue was going to start with Iran striking Israel, but now we see it's Russia has struck Ukraine. So we got a serious problem on our hands, friends. I don't know what's going to be next, but it's a very serious problem.
Fox News national security correspondent Jennifer, we're hearing spiraling out of control, which is obviously extremely disturbing out of the UN. What can you tell us?
Well, Laura, what I can tell you is that I'm watching images in downtown Kyiv where where reporters are showing what appear to be they say they're hearing explosions in the capital of Kyiv. This is what we have been expecting. We have been told that once the airstrikes and missile strikes begin, that all of Ukraine is in Vladimir Putin's sight. I want to read to you what Putin said in his speech at 6 a.m. this morning when he announced this military action inside Ukraine. Here's what he said, and it's very ominous. In an apparent warning to the United States and NATO, he said in his address, a couple of words for those who would be tempted to intervene. Russia will respond immediately, and you will have consequences that you never have had before in your history. I want to pick up on something that Lucas was talking about earlier as to why it is that the U.S. has not put troops on the ground or flying in the airspace above Ukraine. It is a very different situation we find ourselves in tonight because these are two nuclear powers. The U.S. and NATO know that when you are talking about Russia and Russia going into a sovereign country like Ukraine, it's not something where you can put your military there on the ground and risk it escalating into a nuclear war. And so that is why there's been a very calibrated approach, an attempt to warn and declassify all this intelligence, to tell Putin that we're watching, we know what he's doing. They've been working on this since October. The NATO alliance has been working on this together. That's why the sanctions are ready to be rolling out. They're going to be rolling out in waves in the coming days because they knew that they had very few cards to stop Putin if he wanted to move his military position as they watched steadily as he was doing. And so very important to remember that that is why troops are in the Baltics and in the NATO Article 5 countries. They do not want this to spill over into a war between two nuclear powers.